Well, welcome back, and today we'll be looking at two variable data. Our objectives are to find the domain and range of a relation, graph a relation manually, graph a relation using your graphing calculator, and be able to set an appropriate viewing window. Let's begin by looking at a sample data set. An example of a set of two variable data could be a chart with all of our heights and weights on it. I'm okay with doing this since this is an online class, otherwise we wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. So let's assume that our chart would look like this. Notice in one column I have the height in inches, and in the other column we have a weight in pounds. Let's continue to look at two variable data. Let's take this same chart, but this time we'll write the height in red and the weight in blue. We'll do this so that we can convert this to ordered pairs of numbers. And that's exactly what I've done in this list. Notice that the height comes as the first of the ordered pair every time, followed by the weight that is paired with it in the second part of the ordered pair. I've written them in red and blue so that it'll help you look across there and see them. We now want to talk about two more aspects of this data. We want to talk about domain and range. For this data, the domain is the height for each of these items. So you'll notice I can simply list them by pulling the red numbers from each of the ordered pairs. The range will consist of the weight this time. Normally when we look at ordered pairs, we think of them as an X and a Y, where the X is the first part of the ordered pair and the Y is the second part. The domain then is always made up of the X values, while the range consists of the Y values. Let's now look at graphing a relation manually. Here I've given you some ordered pairs of numbers, where the first one is always the X and the second part is always the Y. What we'd like to do now is plot these on a coordinate system. I've drawn a graph for us, and our task now is to plot this data. Let's begin with 5, 3. For 5, 3, we would want to move on the x-axis to where x is equal to 5, and then we would move up to where y is 3, and we would plot a point. Let's now do the next one. When x is negative 4 and y is a positive 2, we'll plot that point. Our next one is x is 6, so we'll move over to 6, and y is 0, so we do not need to move up or down, and we plot that point. And next we need to do x is 0, so we stay there, and y is a negative 4, so let's plot that point. And for our last one, x is a positive 3, and y is a negative 2. So now we have plotted all of this data. Next, we want to try to graph using our calculators. Let's take a different set of ordered pairs of numbers, and let's plot them on our calculator. We'll begin by setting the viewing window on our calculator. We do this by pressing Window and entering the necessary values. When you press Window, your screen may come up looking like this. Yours may have different values in them, but you should see those items: X-min, X-max, X-scale, Y-min, Y-max, Y-scale, and X-res. Let me go on and let you know right now we will not be doing anything with the X-res, but we will talk about each of the other different fields. Let's talk a little bit more about this viewing window and what it means. If I bring up a coordinate system to the left of that window, I want you to notice that the one I have brought up is numbered on the x-axis from negative 10 to positive 10, and each of the tick marks counts as a 1. The y-scale is numbered from negative 10 up to positive 10, and each of the tick marks there also counts 1 unit. That is exactly the window that is defined by the screen you see at the right. X-min, how far do you want to see on the x-axis to the left? X-max asks how far do you want to see to the right. X-scale tells you how many units each tick mark will count, and the same is true for the y values. You can accomplish the window that you see at the right, where all of the numbers are 10, 10, 1, 10, 10, 1, by pressing Zoom 6 for a standard window. Try this if your calculator is not set on a standard window right now. If you Zoom 6 and then press your window key again, you should see exactly the window that I have on the screen. Let's now continue to enter the data. We do this by entering Stat 1 for edit. The Stat button, by the way, is right beneath the Delete button toward the top of your calculator. If L1 is not empty, you want to use your arrow keys to place your cursor on L1. You would need to move up and left until it is darkened over the L1. Once you're there, press Clear and Enter. Repeat that over L2 if that column is not empty as well. We then want to enter the X values into L1 and the Y values into L2. Let me remind you what the values are that we're working with. This is what your screen should look like once you have entered those appropriately. Once you have them entered, second mode will exit this process. Next, we should turn on the stat plot. Before your calculator will graph points, a stat plot feature must be turned on. Our steps for doing that are second, y equal, which is actually the stat plot, and then we enter a 1. This will access stat plot 1. There are 4 stat plots that can be used. We'll use the first one. Once we've done this, we want to use the arrow keys to place the cursor over on, and then hit enter. Next, you move down and place the cursor over the first type of plot, which is a scatter plot. Notice to the right of it there is a line graph, so if you were trying to do a line graph you would simply do the second type instead of the first type. But for us right now we'll use the first one. We'll be plotting points. You hit enter. You should see the word X list followed by L1, and Y list should contain L2. Mark says what kind of mark do you want to make on the screen to plot your point. We'll use the first one since it's the largest and the easiest to see, and I have very old eyes. Your screen should now look like this. Once that is completed, remember that second mode will quit this process. We can now proceed to plot the points that we've entered. Let's graph those points. Let me remind you, here are the points we're attempting to plot. We now hit the graph key and your screen should look like this. This is the easy part considering all the things that we've already had to do. Remember that second quit will end that process. When we're finished plotting points for the day, we should turn the stat plot off. The steps for doing that are second, y equal, which is stat plot, and 1. We want to move the cursor to off and then hit enter. Second quit will get us out of that once again. Let's talk a little bit more about window parameters and how we know how to set them. Let me give you another set of data here. Notice this time we have much larger numbers. I have ordered pairs again, and I have 4 of them this time. Let's talk a little bit about the domain of this set of data. Remember, the domain is nothing more than the X values that accompany this. So let's look at our domain. I see a 9, a 31, a -15, and a 25. Let's talk a little bit then about the range. The range, I see a -21, an 18, a 42, and a 15. It's just the Y values in each of those ordered pairs. So I now have the domain and the range. That'll help me in setting a window. If you'll look at the suggested window setting I have for you here, let's talk a little bit about how I decided this. If you look at your domain, the smallest item in that domain that you see is a -15, and the largest item I see is a 31. So I set my X small enough to accommodate my -15. I went on down a little further so I could see it to a -20, and I wanted to go large enough to make sure I had included the 31. I set mine at 40. I also need to set the X scale. If you will count by 5s on this instead of 1s, your tick marks will stay a little farther apart and you'll be able to read your calculator much more easily. Let's do the same thing now for our Y max. Our smallest one we see is a -21, and the largest one we see is a 42 in the range. So let's look at this. I wanted to go small enough to accommodate the -21, so I set mine at -30, and I wanted to go large enough to make sure I could accommodate the 42. I set mine at 50, and once again I chose a scale of 5. You can actually set this window on your calculator by going to Window and entering those values. That's what it would look like. Please remember that the XRES value is one that we do not need to adjust. If I then entered those points by using Stat Edit to enter them and then plotted them, here's what my calculator would look like. Remember, you would need to go back in and turn StatPlot back on in order to plot these numbers. If I were you now, I would stop this video and attempt to enter that data and make sure that you can indeed plot this set of data and have a screen that looks like mine. I want to close today by asking you to ponder why it is you're enrolled in this course. I hope that it is to arrive at a destination in your life where you can do something that will make you happy. Or as Confucius said it, choose a job you love and you will never have to work a day in your life. I wish that for each of you. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk again soon.